Even though the Orlando Magic have now been to the playoffs, they're not immune from learning a few things along the way. Lessons from weekend elimination games as the young teams start to take over on today's episode of Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is May 20th, 2024. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, a banner weekend for young teams as the conference finals are set. Lessons that the Magic can learn from the Oklahoma City Thunder, Indiana Pacers, and Minnesota Timberwolves as we get ready for the NBA's Final Four. We'll talk about all that and the champion's journey coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for. The Locked On Podcast Network, it's your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match of up to $100. The NBA playoffs march on. We are officially to the Final Four. Congratulations to the Dallas Mavericks, Minnesota Timberwolves, our sister team. The Boston Celtics and the Indiana Pacers conference finals begin Tuesday in Boston. And so obviously we'll be continuing to keep track of what is going on in the playoffs. And, maybe until the end of the season, we will use our Monday show to update on what's going on around the league and update what's going on in the playoffs. I still think it is really important to keep an eye on what's going on in the postseason and what's going on, even though the Magic have been eliminated. Look, we will still get to Magic stuff. Tomorrow, we will talk NBA Draft Combine. We'll talk NBA Draft prospects and get to some wingspans. We'll reserve Tuesdays now for draft updates, and we'll do more draft updates as we get closer and closer to the NBA Draft. We will talk plenty about the offseason. But it's impossible, in my opinion, to divorce what's going on in the playoffs and what's succeeding in the playoffs and what the Magic need to do next. I said this all throughout the year, that the Orlando Magic weren't going to learn what they actually needed until they got to the playoffs. And that was what the Magic needed in terms of what they needed to add to the roster. But also, more importantly, what the Magic need internally. How players like Paolo Banchero, like Franz Wagner, like Jalen Suggs can get better because of what they've learned in the playoffs. This postseason really does feel like a changing of the guard. Obviously, the four teams left are led by players who I believe are 25 and younger. Jason Tatum, Tyrese Halliburton, Luka Doncic, Anthony Edwards. There's a theme that we saw in the first round, or something we highlighted about Paolo Banchero and his place in all this. But it does really feel like the baton is being passed to a new generation of stars. And it's important to look at the four teams that are left and think about the champion's journey. This was a point we made about the Denver Nuggets after they won the NBA championship last year, and I think it's a really important thing to remind everyone. The champion's journey is not a one-year thing. All four of the teams that are remaining in the playoffs, yes, there may be changes to the roster and seismic shifts in how things are done. But the four teams left in the NBA playoffs right now have all been on multi-year journeys to get to this point. They have all been through trials and tribulations. They've all been through setbacks and mistakes. to get to this opportunity with a chance to reach the NBA Finals. And I think it's, especially as the Magic enter this offseason where there's a lot of excitement about what this team can do and who this team can add and throwing a lot of money around. But that's not how Jeff Weltman operates. And that's not how the Magic have operated. The Magic believe in the core group they're building and want to layer and add to what they're doing. And so a playoff series, it's going to make them panic. It's going to make them double down on their group by adding to it. And that's been the message. And again, we talked about what Paolo Banchero said to the Washington Post. We talked about what Jeff Weltman said. Everyone understands that this is the first step in a journey. That the Magic losing to the Cleveland Cavaliers the way that they lost is a step in the journey. It is not the end. Just like the Oklahoma City Thunder, who took a really bad loss to the Dallas Mavericks on Saturday, and we'll talk about that game in a little bit here. It's a step in the journey. How the Dallas Mavericks made the Western Conference Finals 2 years ago, and we're chasing that high again. How they made the mistake of letting Jalen Brunson walk and not treasuring the group that got them there. And how they had to kind of find themselves again. Or how the Boston Celtics have been on this multi-year journey, reaching the conference finals, losing to the Miami Heat on occasion, getting to the NBA Finals 2 years ago. This is a constant journey. How the Indiana Pacers made the deal to get Tyrese Halliburton 2 years ago. Missed the playoffs last year. Missed the playoffs. And had to kind of fight and find their identity again. Or how the Minnesota Timberwolves have been on this journey for 3 years. How they made the play-in and lost. Made it back and won. Fought the Denver Nuggets in last year's first round only to beat them in 7 games this time around. These stories may not be as long as what we saw from Denver, who had been on a journey since 2019 when they turned things fully over to Nikola Jokic and dealt with the injury to Jamal Murray, losing Jeremy Grant and having to find Aaron Gordon to replace him. All of these stories, even the Warriors, let's go back a little bit. Even the Warriors had to grow and learn under Mark Jackson, had to win a first-round series and lose, had to lose in the first round again before they hired Steve Kerr to hit the mountaintop and to start their dynasty. Championships are not won in 1 year. And so, well, I think we've all been a little too quiet, personally, about the Magic and their loss in Game 7. We're going to talk a little bit more about that coming up in a minute. But I think everyone also understands that for the Magic, like the 4 teams remaining, the scars that they're building up now are what's going to make them better. And it's what's going to help them, what's going to help drive them to get back to this spot and to advance further. That the lessons that they're learning here and now in these games are the ones that will make them better. Every team left in the playoffs has had failure. The Wolves lost in the first round last year, lost in the play-in the year before. The Mavericks went to the Western Conference Finals, then didn't make the playoffs last year. The Celtics, we don't need to go into them. Like, they're still trying to win a championship despite all their success. The Pacers missed the playoffs last year. All of these teams have failed. And what defines a championship team, what defines the conference finalists, is how they've responded to these failures and come back stronger than ever. And so the way I think the Magic should think about their first playoff defeat is, yeah, experience. But it's a scar and a hurt that's going to make them better. And we'll talk about how that happens through the context of the Mavericks Game 6 win over the Thunder. We're going to get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at Yahoo Finance. Wouldn't it be great if you could see all of your investment and retirement accounts in one place? With Yahoo Finance, you can consolidate your views from multiple accounts into one hub and access the expert analysis you need to tend to your entire portfolio with confidence. Look, I have my 401k account still. I have a Schwab account. You know, I have an account, another investment account. I need a place to see them all in one place, and Yahoo Finance consolidates them into one screen, which has made it incredibly easy to manage them. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or are looking for the extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. They're the number one finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. Securely link your brokerage account for a unified view of your wealth, including 401k and other investments. A comprehensive perspective is what sets apart great investors, and it's how Yahoo Finance ensures you have the insight to look at your wealth in its entirety. With a community of more than 90 million users each month, their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com, the number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is also brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. What is PrizePicks, you may ask? Well, PrizePicks is America's number one fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. The NBA playoffs are a great opportunity to get in on the game. All you have to do is determine whether they're going to do more or less. Like if you think Jason Tatum is going to score more than 25 points in game 1, you just say he's going to score more than 25 points in game 1. If you think Anthony Edwards is going to get more than 25 points in game 1, you just say more. It's really that simple. And you can combine different sports, whether it's the NBA, whether it's the NHL, whether it's WNBA. You can get all these different sports into one entry, and winning is frankly so simple. It's not like some of those other daily fantasy games where you can be in these giant player pools, and you're just hoping to get your money back. Unfortunately, here in Florida, actually, someone just pointed this out to me. PrizePicks is still available in Florida. You do have to go into a big player pool in order to play, but you still get the simplicity of picking more or less. No complicated salary caps, none of that. PrizePicks is still there for you with a fun twist on the PrizePicks game, now available in Florida. They offer fast and easy withdrawals. They're simple and easy to play. PrizePicks is my daily fantasy sports game of choice. I'm very excited to find out, and thank you to the listener who pointed this out to me. PrizePicks still has a version of its game available in Florida, which is awesome to see. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, use code LOCKEDONNBA for first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. If you're like me and work from home, you're probably turning on some type of sports programming on your TV anyway. You don't want to hear the screaming. It stresses you out. I one time had to watch one of those screaming shows, and it stressed me out. And I was like, I'm never doing this again. For your best bet for a 24/7 sports channel, check out the Locked On Sports Day 24/7 streaming channel. You can find that on YouTube and now on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Get the can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 from local experts like me who know their team best. This is all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So I am obsessed, if you can't tell. by this changing of the guard. And obviously, like, I want the Magic to be part of it. I want the Magic to be considered one of these young teams that are going to control the NBA for the next 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. I really do think the Magic have the opportunity to be in that group. And obviously, I think what they do this summer will go a long way to determining all that. But it sure feels like teams like the Milwaukee Bucks and the Philadelphia 76ers, and certainly the Miami Heat, are kind of on their last legs. You can kind of see the Cleveland Cavaliers in a little bit of turmoil. This is not to say that it won't be easy to hold on to the spot, and the Magic have to earn every bit of themselves, every bit of things. But, when we're looking at the Timberwolves emerging the way they have this year and the Pacers emerging the way they have this year, I have no reason to think the Magic can't be part of this group. Orlando is certainly a little bit behind those teams because Paolo Banchero is in his second season. None of these teams are being led by players on their rookie contracts anymore. Anthony Edwards is on his second contract. Tatum's obviously on Tatum, Tyrese Halliburton, Luka Doncic. You want to be in a position to be competing for championships by the time Paolo is on his second contract. And so we're getting there in the next 2 years. I do think the Magic are going to be part of this group. And I think it's important to remember that. I think the Magic should consider themselves part of this new wave and the next generation of teams that are about to take over. Like I said, though, this thing's a journey. And there's going to be failures, and there's going to be setbacks, and there's going to be trials and tribulations, and there's going to be ups and downs that this young team is going to have to learn to weather. And this season was special. Like, no doubt about it. This season was special because it felt like there was no pressure. All the Magic had to do was make the playoffs, and we would consider them a success. And we would say, y'all did it. Great job. And honestly, that's how it felt when we talked to the team in exit interviews and listening back to exit interviews. That's how it still feels. That as painful as Game 7 was, it took nothing away from what the team accomplished this year. And I couldn't help but think about the Magic's appearance in Game 7 as I watched Oklahoma City play Dallas in Game 6 on Saturday. Because like Orlando, Oklahoma City went up by 17. Like Orlando, they kind of gave away the lead. They gave away the lead. They lost. Like Orlando, their offense started to get a little tight. You could start to see their youth show. Because as Dallas got back in the game, as the pressure, especially on the road, increased, you could see them not know what to do and turn to their star and say, carry us the rest of the way home. And look, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander did his darndest. Certainly did a better job of it than Paolo did, even though Paolo had a great Game 7. But he alone was not enough. But, as I listened to some of the Thunders, I listened to Locked On Thunder, as I listened to what the Thunder had to say, their approach to their loss in Game 6 was very similar to how the Magic approached their loss in Game 7. They expressed nothing but gratitude over what they accomplished this season and highlighted the lessons that they learned in what was essentially that team's first playoffs. I know they were the top seed in the West, and there's a lot of pressure that usually comes with being the top seed in the West, but they would tell you, just like the Magic would tell you, nobody expected them to be there. Nobody expected them to take that big of a step or to show that much of themselves. And while I think that loss hurt and the postseason hurt, I think they understood that it is, again, part of the journey. And that what they learned in their first playoff series is going to make each one of them better. The Thunder, I believe, were the second youngest team in the league. San Antonio, I believe, was the youngest team in the league. Orlando was the fourth youngest team in the league. The Thunder know there is a lot of basketball left in them, that they have a lot that they're going to be learning, and that this is not their last playoff run. They may, who knows if they will be the top overall seed again. Seeding may not matter that much. We have a 3 and a 5 seed in the West. We have the 1 and the 6 in the East. Seeding may not matter that much because we're in a league of parity at this point. Like, we're gonna have a brand new champion. Jason Tatum's never won. Luka Doncic has never won. Anthony Edwards has never won. Tyrese Halliburton has never won. As much as I love to talk about playoff experience, and again, the Celtics have it. Luka has it to the conference finals. Pascal Siakam is really the only prominent champion left in these playoffs. Kyrie Irving, Pascal Siakam, and Kyrie Irving. There's your two. We're going to have a new champion this year. And that's really rare. That's really special. I want people to appreciate that. Everyone says we want NFL-style parity. We've got it in the league right now. Kudos to Adam Silver if that was the goal. But like I said, this is a multi-year journey. And the Thunder seem to understand that. Just like the Magic seem to understand that. And while the playoffs certainly have revealed areas where the Magic need to add to their team and layer some new elements onto the team, they know, like the Thunder know, their core is set. Whether it's Paolo Banchero, Jalen Suggs, and Franz Wagner, or whether it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren, and Jalen Williams. Those core groups, and maybe the Thunder have more, maybe the Magic have more, those core groups are set. And those are the players that are going to learn the most from these playoff appearances and are going to be expected to grow the most the next time they get back to the playoffs. And for both the Magic and the Thunder, there will be a next time. No doubt about it. These teams are not going anywhere. Again, there will be ups and downs. Boston's been a 1 seed. They've been a 6 seed, I believe, too. There will be ups and downs. But these are the teams that are going to help define the next decade of the league. And, teams will come and go. We'll see how things evolve and change. But both teams exited their playoffs with disappointing losses, no doubt. Heartbreaking, gut-wrenching losses. But they exited understanding internally that pain is going to make them better. Franz Wagner, I said this on a podcast earlier today. If you're upset with Franz Wagner's 1 for 17 showing in Game 7, I can guarantee you Franz is 100 times more upset than you are. These guys know that there is work to do and that failures in the playoffs are things to learn from and grow from, not things to wallow in and be upset about. Because this is the start of that journey. When we come back, we'll talk about the importance of offensive diversity and what we learned about it in these games this weekend. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. It's conference finals time. We're in the league semifinals in both the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. I'm told here that I should give you some odds at FanDuel because, look, obviously the Magic aren't playing, but there's still a lot to get to. We got the early lines for Game 1. Boston favored by 9. Minnesota favored by 4 over Dallas in Game 1 up in Minneapolis. Going to be a rocking time. And right now, Boston remains the favorite at minus 160 to win the NBA championship. Minnesota coming in second at plus 280. If you're looking for value Indiana, the long shot at plus 2,600. You can get all this and more over at FanDuel. So make every playoff shot count at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. So we're talking playoff lessons and things the Magic can learn from the playoffs. And, it's obviously different this year. I've done kind of this idea of doing playoff lessons and really kind of learning both what's going on in these games and kind of team building things. And, I think we were sitting here looking at the Thunder, we're looking at ourselves and saying, like, look, stay the course. We're doing the right things. We learned a lot from our games as well. And, that was always my big point about getting to the playoffs. Get to the playoffs, you'll learn what you really need, because when teams start to poke holes in you and you start to feel tight in the pressure, that's when a lot of issues are revealed. And the issue that the Magic had in their series against the Cavaliers is one that we're actually seeing throughout the NBA. Why did Dallas beat Oklahoma City on Saturday? Well, I would argue, as good as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is, I would argue it's because Oklahoma City's offense became one-dimensional. They relied too heavily on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to carry them. Why did Indiana survive New York? Because they kept their attack. They didn't lean on one player. They leaned into their identity instead of getting tight. They played free and loose. Obviously, shots going in helps a ton. When you shoot 70% in a game, that helps a lot. Why did Minnesota beat Denver? Why did Minnesota come back against Denver? Well, Anthony Edwards trusted his teammates. Denver just decided, we're doubling Anthony Edwards every time he touches the ball. And Edwards struggled with his shot and struggled to escape that trap in the first half. But in the second half, he made the right pass. And then Minnesota made the right pass before Denver could rotate back. And they just punished and pummeled Denver for that decision to the point where they could no longer trap Edwards. And then Edwards was able to take over. On the other side, Denver just leaned so much on Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray and the same patterns that Minnesota sat on them and prevented them from getting shots. This is something that I hope I've gotten to the heart of a little bit. But this to me is the biggest need for the Orlando Magic. Is when we got to game 7 and really game 5 and game 1 and game 2, all the losses the Magic had, eventually they lost trust in each other. And look, the Magic couldn't shoot the ball in Cleveland to save their lives. That's a big part of this. And they kind of lost that trust and then started to run the same thing over and over and over again. It's what I've kind of called offensive diversity. You got to be able to attack in different ways. You got to be able to keep the defense off balance so they're not just sitting on the same thing. You got to be able to get your star player, whether it's Paolo, whether it's Franz, whether it's someone else, the ball in his spots in unique ways, in different ways. The goal might be the same, but the action has to be a little bit different. And what the Magic, I think, really lacked is what Denver lacked, what Oklahoma City lacked, what New York certainly lacked after Jalen Brunson got hurt, what Boston sometimes lacks when they get into their ISO game, and that's offensive diversity. A way to create that's different every time down the floor, or roughly different every time down the floor. We saw this with Orlando in Game 7. As they were losing grip on the lead, they would try and run that Paolo-Franz pick and roll, get Paolo on the block against a smaller player, and Cleveland would just sit on it. Or Cleveland would do that soft hedge to give Mobley a chance to recover, and Paolo wouldn't get the switch, and then he'd be stuck again. This is where Jalen Suggs not being able to attack off the dribble, not being able to run pick and rolls really hurts the team. This is where we all believe the Magic need a point guard and need to find a way to pick up their pace a little bit so they can get easy, fast breaks. You look at the Minnesota game, so much of how Minnesota came back was they converted misses into baskets before Denver could get their defense up. So much of the Magic series against the Cavs was about who could beat the other team down the court and play against a non-set defense. this is, I think, the big lesson from the weekend and from these elimination games this weekend. And the big lesson for the Magic from their own elimination game, that you have to be able to score in multiple ways. You have your pet plays, you have your key players, but you have to be able to get them the ball and keep them involved in unique ways and in different ways. And the teams that do that are the ones that succeed as teams make adjustments, as teams change and adapt their defense. That's what the playoffs are about. And look, you get this deep in a playoff series, and obviously we're starting some new playoff series here. When you get deep into a playoff series, everybody knows what's coming. And so it is about execution and about finding the little gaps. But if you're just doing the same thing over and over again, and that's all you can do and all you trust, more importantly, because the playoffs are all about trust more than, for the coaches, more than anything else, that's when you stall out. That's when you see teams lose these big leads. Because the defense is able to sit on the one thing you're able to do and nothing else is working. And so to me, that's a big lesson that I hope the Magic have internalized, is chasing after offensive diversity and finding ways to expand this team's offense. Because again, we all know what the Magic's issue is. They've had a bottom 10 offense every year since Dwight Howard left in 2012. They've got to expand their offense. And that will be the big question for them as they move forward here and as they get ready for this key offseason. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all of them single podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. You can also check us out on YouTube. Just search for Locked On Magic. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And also be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub. I'm doing my playoff lessons. I'm doing my what went right, what went wrong. My player evaluations will be coming up soon. Doing all of that on my Patreon page. So if you want the full season recap, subscribe to my Patreon page at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. And as always, I appreciate your support. On tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic, we will talk NBA Draft Combine. We will get to wingspans. We will get to shooting drills. We will get to what the Magic are actually looking at with the number 18 pick, including prospects to know. We'll do all that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. We'll make Tuesday our draft day. Monday will be our playoff day, roughly until the end of the playoffs, until we get closer and closer to the draft, and we'll expand our draft coverage a little bit. But obviously, we got a lot to get to as the offseason continues. We continue to be 5 days a week here on Locked On Magic. But now that you're done listening to us, be sure to check out the Locked On Sports Day 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Day is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Day now available on the free Fire TV channels app. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. For Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Wright. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.